I was baptized here at the NAS in December of 2009 in the middle of my depression. And that stronghold of depression and loneliness and emptiness and just lack of self-worth and self-value led me to actually try to take my life 3 or 4 months later. My name is Evan Gantz. I've been going to the NAS for 17 years now. I was baptized here December of 2009. Even after I was baptized and became a believer, I still struggled with depression. Depression was something that I got in high school, and it actually led me to trying to take my life when I was 17 years old. The strongholds of depression for me were just super debilitating. I was tired all the time. I had no drive, no passion, no hunger. I questioned who God was. I questioned who I was, my identity, my worth, my value, everything. As I wrestled with those things, I found myself just super alone. The enemy was really good at telling me lies about myself, and I was able to believe them just because of the place I was in. He would tell me that I was not enough. He would tell me that my life's not worth it. He would tell me that nobody loves me. And it got to the point where I didn't really love myself a whole lot either. It's not that I hated my life. I just felt an emptiness inside because I was searching for that validation, for that worth. I spent every night crying to God. I spent every night questioning God. And I figured nobody would care. Nobody would miss me, and nobody would even know I was gone. I sought wise counsel. I started doing counseling here at the church, even just like psychologically. I started praying more. I started, just getting into the Word. So some things that were really uplifting for me were my parents, for sure. They were just super supportive and encouraging. I was a part of the youth group. That was super encouraging as well. The leaders were, constant and pouring into me. And then even just serving, just like being able to kind of forget about yourself for a little bit and then putting yourself out there just for the benefit of others really helped me just to kind of keep my mind off of what I was going through. The grace of God, saved me. And I didn't know why He put me through that season of my life until about 7 years later when I got to travel the country and go to school assemblies and speak to high schoolers, speak to middle schoolers, speak to elementary schoolers, just about my story. God used the darkest moment of my entire life for His glory, to bring His light, to bring His love, to bring His truth into people's lives. And that's when I realized that was my purpose for that season, that it wasn't about me at all. It was all about Him and who He wanted to save. I think when you're in those seasons, you're afraid. You're afraid to admit that you're broken. You're afraid to admit that you're struggling. It's almost like it's a pride thing. Just because you're struggling doesn't mean you're failing. Just because you're going through something right now doesn't mean you're not a believer. I think God likes to use our struggles as an enhancement for our purpose and not as an interruption for our purpose. If there's any message of hope, I think when people look at me, they don't see how it's possible that I went through something like that. Because I think when people look at me, they see the dancing Evan, they see the Evan that's not afraid to just make himself look like an idiot, make himself look like a fool, who's just able to jump around and dance and be silly and be funny. And that's not anything other than the joy that God's given me, despite what I've gone through. And I've learned that those circumstances don't define my joy, that only Jesus can. And He's given me that joy just to be joyful to others, to show them that it doesn't matter what you're going through, joy is still an option, joy is still a chance, joy is still something that you can experience. It's so cool because God has actually called me into ministry, and I didn't know what I wanted to do for the longest time, but a couple years ago I heard Him just speak so clearly that He wants me to go down this path of full-time ministry. So I'm in school right now to become a pastor, actually taking my classes and getting all my credentials done and all that stuff. And I'm excited to just continue to spread this joy, to share this hope, to tell His story and not my story, but just to be a beacon of hope in some people's lives. Depression had a hold on my life, but it no longer does because Jesus does.